Hello, and welcome everyone to the Soldiers of Cinema podcast, episode 42. I'm Clark Coffey, and with me as always is Mr. Cullen McFader. What's up, buddy?
Howdy. How's it going?
Your mustache is looking. I wish that we did video along with this audio because
I know. One day.
You are crushing it. You are crushing it. I have mustache envy. I wish that I could grow a mustache like that. I was actually revisiting. We're going to take a quick digression here, and this is not what this episode is about, but I had watched Tombstone recently, which is one of my favorite movies from my childhood. And the reason I was watching Tombstone was because I had recently watched Val Kilmer's documentary, Val.
Me as well, yeah.
Which I really enjoyed. And, you know, again, I don't want to get too far off our path here, but I really enjoyed the film. It reminded me how much I enjoyed a lot of Val's work. So I was watching Tombstone, and I was just like, I have never seen a better mustache in my life than Kurt Russell's mustache in that film.
Oh, it's
like,
so good. Yeah.
Is it even real? I'm like, how can a mustache be that real, like that thick and full? And I'm like, I just have mustache envy. Of course, nobody there would know unless you knew me personally, because this is audio, but I just am like really lacking in the facial hair department. I do not have good facial hair, and I feel a little bit sad for that. But
what was that? You did a sketch once about the spray-on beard.
Yeah,
that's a good one. I remember that.
I did. Yeah, I did. Cullen's referring to. I did like a short film, like just a sketch basically of like a fake commercial for a product that I had named Insta Beard, which was a spray-on beard. And yes, that was the inspiration for that, was that I was sad that I can't really grow a beard or a mustache. So anyway, all right, but on to what this podcast is actually about, and that is Paul Verhoeven's 1987 film Robocop, which was picked by Cullen, and I'm excited that you did, because I am a big fan of genre films, of which this is definitely one of them.
Oh, totally. And that summer, it's actually interesting because if you read the release of this movie, it was like that summer was just filled with genre films.
Yeah. Well, and
you read some of that. Again, to go on an aside just for a second.
Yeah.
The envy I have, even for myself as a kid, and it's like you read back on summers that had just like hit after hit after hit after hit. And it's like, imagine being able to go to the movie theaters every weekend and see something just incredible and fantastic, and you know, it really makes you yearn.
I know, huh? Well, I mean, so I'm old enough that I actually did see Robocop in the theater. I saw it on initial theatrical release. Now, I was only 11. And that's a topic for another time. Should an 11-year-old have been allowed to go see? been admitted? Now, of course, technically I shouldn't have, because it was a rated R film, and I think that's 17 in the United States, right? And so I technically shouldn't have. But I very specifically remember actually getting admission into that movie with a children's ticket. So there you go.
Yeah, I also was old enough to see this in theaters, but last weekend. So
yeah, well, that's
it was actually funny because I chose this before I knew that I was going to get the chance to see it in theaters, and then a friend of mine was just kind of like browsing local. There's a lot of really great independent theaters that are just single screen theaters in Toronto that are do a lot of second run shows and classics and stuff, and they were doing a double feature for free, no ticket charge.
Wow.
Of Robocop and Manhunter one night. And so I was like,
nice.
Hey, I'm doing that for the podcast. I might as well go and see it. And so it was the first time I'd seen this in theaters, and it was really, really great to be back in theaters.
In a theater.
And also be able to see, one of my favorite movies. I think that this is pretty high up there if I was going to list, the movies that I love. I very different than a lot of the other movies that I like, but I think that it's just so well done and so perfectly crafted with such a clear intention that of course we'll get into in detail. But
I mean, it's right up my alley, because I am not. Look, I love all types of film, but really my heart is probably most into. The way I would describe it is a film that punches way above its weight class. This is a relatively low budget genre film. I mean, for crying out loud, it's called Robocop, right?
It's funny. It always reminds me of, if anyone has played like the Grand Theft Auto games, that there's always these things in the games that are like fake movies, and they'll like play a trailer for the fake movie or whatever.
Right.
It's always this ridiculous title, and RoboCop to me seems like a movie that would be in that universe.
It's like a satire.
It's so ridiculous. Yeah,
absolutely. But this movie has no business being good, right? Let's on paper, this movie has no business being a good movie, but it is, and in spite of all of these things, it is fantastic, and it's a much better film than it has any right to be, and I absolutely love, those kind of films. Maybe it's because I love underdogs, I don't know, but or maybe it's because it's just the way my mind works, and it's, when I imagine sitting down to make a film, this is often the kind of film that I like to make. It's not pretentious, it doesn't take itself too seriously, it revels in what I think makes cinema great, which is kineticism, and yes, even that means violence. And I think it embraces what cinema is, which is visual storytelling, and of sometimes mythic proportions here, and I love it. I just love it. So I've always loved RoboCop. But let's talk about that a little more. It's one of the things we always like to jump off it with, is kind of our first impression, our first experiences with the film. And so we both saw this film young, but of course I saw it in '87 and you saw it much later, but we both saw it about the same age in our lives. So tell us a little bit about, where you were when you saw this film for the first time, if you remember, and kind of what your impression was. How did you feel about the flick when you first saw it when you were a kid?
Yeah, I think I was 12 or 13. I think I was just in middle school at the time. And it's honestly not an exuberantly interesting story, but I remember seeing, I think I either saw it on like AMC or Spike TV.
Okay, like on TV.
Like
okay.
they were just playing it, and so commercial breaks and all that. And of course, I'm sure it was censored down to, be allowed for TV. But I just remember being so caught up, especially the music. Like I love the score for this movie. I think it's pretty much a perfect score.
It's outstanding,
and it's bombastic, and it's like loud, but it's got such a wonderful theme that you whistle while you're coming out of the theater. But I remember I used to I just loved this. My dad, I've spoken a lot about like the movies that my dad used to show me as a kid, and a lot of it was like Hitchcock and kind of like older classics like that, and things from like the 60s and 70s, but he was never really super into, with a few exceptions, like 80s action. So it was something that was kind of a blind spot for me growing up. I never really saw like Predator. I didn't really watch like the Terminator until I was older.
Wow.
And, I got it on Blu-ray myself, and so a lot of those like 80s action movies I kind of missed. Rambo and things like that.
Yeah, those were like the meat of my diet as a child.
So that was kind of I guess I was ironically seeing a lot from like before then. And again, Top Gun is a movie that my dad loved, so that was the 80s action movie that I used to watch. I still love Top Gun to this day, but so I was never really super like into it just by virtue of not having seen a lot of it, like that kind of genre. So I remember before I'd seen it, I knew what it was. I'd heard of it and always thought, again, it was just kind of like, I think seeing it on a poster and just being like, oh, it's just a stupid B action movie about a robot cop. And then I watched it and it was like this, like funny and punchy and brilliantly executed, brilliantly cast. Like there's no role in the movie. There's nobody that's not giving 110%, but at the same time isn't perfect for the role that they're in.
Crisply edited. It's great
edited
pace.
so supremely. And so I used to like play video games after and like play the theme song. And I'd be playing like GTA, or I'd be playing even some like World War II game. Yeah. And I'd be like shooting the guys to the Robocop theme. and like, it was just such a, it was one of those movies that, again, what's also funny is that it's not really a movie that, like, even though I loved it, it didn't have a ton of influence on me. Like, it's not something that I necessarily
You're not going to go out and
say that or like that in my filmmaking, I've never really like cited RoboCop as something that is inspiring me to make something. But at the same time, it's a movie that I watch very frequently. I probably watch it once a year, and this year I've watched it twice.
It probably rubs off on you on ways, it probably rubs.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the satire, especially, in like the way that he handles humor. Like, I love, the moment, again, and we kind of discussed this, but the moment in the convenience store when he first is RoboCop and he goes in and the guy's like, F me, F me, F me, and he's like saying it like 50 times, and it's this really funny, moment of just pure action and insanity, but it's overlaid with this ridiculous performance by, you know, the robber and stuff like that. And so I think things like that certainly rubbed off on me. And I think that, you know, the style of that also has rubbed off in a lot of, like, I see, weirdly enough, like a lot of especially Edgar Wright's earlier movies, like I see a lot of this in those. I see, so there's tons of stuff that I think that I watched, especially as a kid, that I just don't think I realized was necessarily connected to this movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's great. I mean, I don't know how else to say it other than the fact that I loved it a lot as a kid, and loved the music, and I loved the action and the gore, and
yeah. Well, that's totally, you know, and that's the thing, is like films can be enjoyable. You know, it's they don't have to always be this kind of highfalutin, you know, high art kind of thing, and that, again, that's what, you know, I think sometimes when a filmmaker sets out to make something like on purpose, you're shooting for, you know, for an Oscar, you're shooting to make something really elevated, and you know, there's, you know, a lot of times that can really kind of come back on you and turn out crap, and it does a lot of times, and I see that happen a lot. And you know, it's the Oscar winners are filled with films like that, to me, that are frankly dead inside. They're boring, they're dead inside, they lack humor, they lack kind of self-understanding, self-consciousness, and they take themselves too seriously. And you know, in my mind, there's nothing worse than a film that takes itself too seriously. It's just, they're boring to me. They're dead inside. And this, I think, is filled with fun. It's filled with a sense of humor, and
super heightened.
And but you know, and a lot of people feel this way. You know, you don't have to be embarrassed about liking this film. I mean, it was a huge commercial success when it was released in '87. It earned $53.5 million, which I don't know what inflation would be now for almost, you know, 35 years later, whatever it is, but that's substantial.
It's probably a few hundred million, probably.
Yeah, it's substantial on a small budget. It had about a $13.5 million budget, which, you know, even for then was not huge, especially for a science fiction kind of futuristic action movie. That was pretty low budget. And it even received an Academy Award, I think, for sound design, if I'm not mistaken, right? Wasn't it for something with sound?
Yeah. Let me make sure that we get that right. But yeah, I mean,
and if you go back and you look at reviews of the era, you know, yes, there were some critics who harped on the violence, and you know, that's always going to be the case. But you know, by and large, for the most part, it was a really, you know, critically acclaimed film. It was a surprise hit.
Audiences loved it.
Yeah. So.
Oh no, I'll never be apologetic for my love of RoboCop. If I was into like cosplay or anything like that, or you know, one of those people that goes to conventions and like dresses up, I would totally.
Well, you've got RoboCop. I think that you should do that, and I think you should keep the mustache.
Oh,
so
yeah.
It's like a modern, yes, a mustached RoboCop would be awesome. Obviously, we would, you know, you could just see that mustache peek out like right below the visor there. I think that would be fantastic. That's awesome. Well, all right. I mean, so for me, I was close to the same age as you. I mean, now I know exactly how old I was because I saw it at the theater, and I know when it was released. So I was 11 when I saw this film. And I did see it theatrically, and it's interesting, you know, there aren't a ton of films. I mean, I saw films like every week as a kid, you know, or, I mean, very, very regularly. That's something that I did as a kid. And I can only remember a handful of films, you know, seeing them in the theater. Well, maybe more than a few handfuls. But nonetheless, you know, only a small fraction of the films I saw can I remember. And I so very vividly, specifically remember seeing this film in the theater. And, I mean, I can even remember the feeling, how I felt during, you know, for example, when Peter Weller as Murphy, before he's turned into RoboCop, is executed by the gang in that, you know, warehouse, the abandoned warehouse, and how he's, you know, basically just, you know, his hands blown off, his arms blown off. He's just, you know, shot, just, you know, it seems like the scene goes on for 5 minutes. They're just torturing, shooting this guy. And I just remember being, I mean, I floored. Just the film felt so visceral. It felt so, I mean, some of it almost was documentary kind of in its execution, with, you know, like the you know, where he's taken to the ER right after that.
Following,
and it seemed, you know, almost real, as crazy as that seems, you know, even though the violence is very heightened, it seemed almost real to me. It was, I really affected by it. So yeah, I mean, it really stood out to me. I very vividly remember it, and I was pretty much blown away by it. Yeah, and then of course, like from then on, after that, I would occasionally use RoboCop lines in my "Dead or alive, you are coming with me."
Oh, he's great to quote. Yeah.
So
Anytime you need like your dog to go out for a walk or something.
exactly. So yeah, I saw it young and I loved it, and of course, every time it come on, TV or something, I'm sure I've seen it, multiple times since then. And then in preparation for this podcast, the latest viewing I saw, Arrow has a new Blu-ray release with, I don't know that it's a brand new transfer, but it's a revised color correction, I think, a little bit on it, but it's a very nice transfer, and a lot of extras, handful of commentary tracks and things like that. So if you're into the film, Arrow does have a relatively new release, and
Yeah, Arrow's great. Yeah.
yeah, not to digress too much again, but they have a channel now that you can subscribe to. So if you love genre
Yes.
films,
Yeah.
if you love B movies, boy, my goodness, that's like the gold pot at the end of the rainbow right
Yeah,
there
they
for
do
genre
really
films.
great work. Yeah.
So, all right. Well, I mean, so let's talk a little bit more about the things that jump out at us about this film. One of the things that I learned, I did not know this. I thought this was kind of interesting. So it was written by Edward Neumeier and Michael Miner. But Edward Neumeier, this is interesting. So I'm also a Blade Runner fan. I think you probably are too, right? I love Blade Runner. Well, apparently, Ed Neumeier was like at the beginning of his career. He was working as he was set dressing, basically, just like on the studio lot for Blade Runner. They're like trashing the streets and everything, right? It's this dystopian future, of course. And so he was one of the guys that was just like set dressing, like throwing trash, making and throwing fake trash everywhere to dress the set. And he didn't even know what the film was about. And so finally he kind of asked, somebody else, he's like, what is this movie about? And he's like, oh, the crew member he asked kind of pointed to some of the characters, like, oh, they're robots. And he could kind of see that, like, there was some kind of police thing going on. But he's like, in his mind, he's like, this doesn't look like a robot. They just look like people. And of course, he didn't understand kind of the idea that behind the film of replicants. That's the whole point, is that you can't discern them from humans. But at the time, he's thinking, well, that's not a robot. I'm going to write a real robot, But he kind of combined that idea of police and robots and future, and the idea of Robocop kind of came into his mind. So the film is kind of inspired to some extent by Blade Runner, which I thought was pretty interesting.
No, that's really, yeah. I mean, it makes sense, total sense.
Sure.
Because that was one of the things that we were sort of talking about, was that, like, even because this movie's obviously much lower budget than Blade Runner, and relatively low budget for the time anyway.
Yeah.
And especially for the scope of the movie.
Yeah.
That it's not like a dystopian future movie where there's flying cars and androids walking the street and big television screens that are in the sides of buildings and stuff. It feels, and I think to its benefit, very real in its execution. Like, it feels like
totally grounded.
very heightened version of what the world was, and in some ways very much still is like.
Yeah.
And so I think that again, it really works in its favor. Like, as apart from the fact that there's a robotic police officer and there's like the Ed 209 robots and stuff. That other than that, it really does feel very grounded. Like, the police cars are just Ford Tauruses, and which, again, you mentioned that they were kind of like this new futuristic car at the time.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, especially
were
watching
real.
today,
But they're
you
real
look at
cars.
that and you're like, it's a Ford Taurus. It's not a flying car. So yeah, I think that the writing, and I'm curious to know when it was being written, and I don't know if we have an answer for that, or if perhaps there's an answer somewhere.
Well, I mean,
but,
Blade Runner,
if when he was writing it, I wonder if his budgetary, the thing that he had in mind for budget was larger. Like, I wonder if he wanted to go more for the aesthetic of a Blade Runner, where there was a lot of special effects and you were building up this like world and this universe of, like, big smokestacks and things like that.
I don't think so. Now I can't be for sure. This is like speculation on my part, and somebody listening, you may have more insight. But so he would have been on the Blade Runner set in '82. So obviously this was written between '82 and probably 85, at the latest, because you're in pre-production, and the film probably shot in 86, released in 87. So you've got a couple years there between, he would have been on set maybe 81 on Blade Runner. So between 81 and 85 or so is when I'm guessing it was written. But, who knows? I mean, I think smart writers probably tend to not write themselves into huge budgets.
Yes. Yeah.
Especially if he was that was the beginning of his career. I hadn't heard in any commentaries or read anywhere that they had to radically reduce the scope.
The year isn't even specified in the movie either, or in any of the, like, it's just sort of said in the near future.
And they even talk about how they talked about how they specifically did that, that they didn't want to date it. They didn't want to put, in 1999, or something like that. But I'm pretty sure that the television broadcasts were a fundamental original part of the script, and the television the news broadcast and the commercials, I think, do the heavy lifting of creating the world. And it's a really brilliant idea, right? Because, whether it's, the commercial for the 6000 SUX, this futuristic car, which is a hilarious parody of American vehicles, less so in the mid or late 80s and more so in the 70s. But that was, we were in a transition period there, entering the malaise era of American vehicles. But you've got the heart transplant commercial where you get a sense that this is like really common, right? And it also is interesting in that it kind of, now we have so many like pharmaceutical companies advertising directly to consumers. And so this kind of was, kind of guessed that was going to happen a little bit, with this like heart transplant stuff being directly, directly
just a marketing thing,
marketed to consumers. And it's a whole, on a lot of little levels, it's fun. I mean, because it's also, you've got obesity epidemics. And so of course, the heart thing kind of is hints
a little
at
bit
that a
resonant
little
almost in a
bit,
way.
and all this stuff. But I guess, and the news broadcast, of course, where we kind of see the conflict in the world, and it's so effective.
Well, it's something that
world.
Verhoeven uses again in like he does it in, and same screenwriter Edward Neumeier in Starship Troopers. It's kind of like a staple of his almost at this point. I think that it's so. What I think is hilarious with those news broadcasts especially is that you could honestly probably cut them into real news broadcasts both from the time and today, and they would almost seem like proper. And I think that's what's so brilliant about the whole movie is that while it's such an overt satire, it's so over the top and stuff like that. I think what makes it so brilliant is that our world is over the top too.
Yeah.
And so a lot of what you actually see in this, and it's like you were sitting there watching it as a movie and you're going, oh, this is ridiculous and it's hilarious, but it's actually quite pertinent to like the way that things run today. And
it's not that crazy.
Exactly.
In a way. I mean, it's actually not that crazy, which is kind of sad. But I mean, if you look at commercials, if you kind of like are able to step outside of yourself, get a little of objectivity, and you take a look at what commercials advertise, and you take a look at, the politics and the violence that exist in our world, and of course, the privatization of law enforcement to some extent, but most like prison, you take a look at the militarization of police force, which has just exploded.
Hyper Reaganism,
and so many of these things, right? And kind of neoliberalism and the Reagan 80s and, all this stuff. You're like, wow, a lot of the things that they were speaking to there, it's not that far-fetched. It's not that much of an exaggeration, And I guess that's kind of the point. It's like, how do you satire something that's already outrageous? You really have to take it to extremes. And I think that's what Verhoeven does here. And that's, we talked, it's interesting, of course, this film had a hard time achieving an R rating. They had to excise some of the violence in order to keep from it having an X rating. And, and you and I were talking about this a little bit before our recording, but it, in a way, it's funny. The MPAA actually did themselves, I think they did themselves a disservice. If they wanted the film to appear less violent or disturbing, they should have allowed that violence to remain, because
that's one of the things that Paul Verhoeven himself says.
Yes,
he was almost like terrified when they were like, cut this, and this, because he was like,
It's going to
if
make it
I
too
cut
real.
these violent scenes down, then it's going to seem intentional. And it's
Yeah.
going to seem like the violence is supposed to be violent and disturbing.
And it's
Whereas
supposed to be,
when it
yeah.
was over the top, when there was a minute straight of the guy getting shot in the boardroom, and you know, Murphy's death that was so much more violent and things like that,
Right.
then it was very clearly supposed to be over the top, and it was very clearly a joke. And he was sort of like, I was horrified when they were like, cut that down. And I think that that's a big reason. I think there was like, if I'm not correct too, like censorship of the movie in the UK as well. And that was like a huge issue for him, because he was like, no, it's the bigger you go, the more clear it is that it's a joke. And
Right.
so I don't actually know if I've ever seen the really cut down versions of the movie, other than when I first saw it on TV.
Yeah.
But I don't really remember that. That's not, of course, the version that sticks in my head. So I think that, at least to me, it was always very clear that the violence was like overt and over the top and nuts, because I can't imagine taking it any other way. But I can understand Verhoeven's kind of like fear. It's kind of like the same thing that, you know, when Hitchcock released Psycho and people took it seriously, he did an interview, I think, a year later, and he was like, I was horrified to find out that people thought that it was supposed to be serious, and
Right.
that he was like playing everything so tongue-in-cheek. But he was like, the fact that people watched that movie and thought that it was, you know, supposed to be genuine and grounded and like a drama was like horrifying. And I think Verhoeven is kind of, you know, speaking the same sort of tune there.
Yeah.
Or singing the same tune.
Well,
which is,
I have is my memory of the way I felt when I saw it, and I saw the, you know, the censored version, and there may be multiple censored versions. I'm not sure if other countries had to censor it in different ways, but in the United States, there were, you know, a couple of things, like you said, the boardroom execution with Ed 209 shooting the executive, that was cut down, and I think there was like a where they are executing Murphy, and he's shot in the head. I think that was maybe trimmed a little bit, which is a shame, because it's a really cool puppet shot. It's practical.
yeah, it's
where they
a
created
fantastic puppet. Yeah.
Yeah, and it really, really looks amazing. I mean, honestly, if I didn't know it was a puppet, I probably could have, you know, I probably would have bought it, you know, if I hadn't known before.
I didn't know it was. I bought it the other day when I saw it in theaters.
Yeah,
I was
it's
like,
actually.
How did they? I guess they just attached like a squib to his head or something.
Yeah. It's really, really well done. But but I guess and also I'm 11, so you have to put it in that context. I see it when I'm 11. I mean, I was definitely affected by the violence. I wasn't sitting. I mean, obviously, you know, you're 11. A lot of the humor and satire is going to fly over your head. Although I think some of it did land even at 11, but I mean, I definitely was affected by the violence. It definitely like disturbed me. I remember sitting in the theater and just being like, you know, mouth agape, like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, I remember the one scene that really disturbed me. I remember as a kid, and that like really I was like, oh my god, was the boardroom, because I remember them all like, the guy is innocent and it's just a mistake that he gets shot, and then they all walk out afterwards and they're all just like talking about it. And then, you know, my favorite line now in the movie, one of them is like, oh, that's life in the big city.
Yeah,
and it's like after this guy
it's
gets
just
blown
nonchalant.
away.
Yeah, it's like
And so but I remember as a kid, like that scene, I was like, oh my god, like that guy just died and for no reason. It was a mistake. And it was like, I remember feeling bad. It's like nobody's helping him and stuff. And
yeah, exactly. Which is the point. Yeah. But then you have, on the flip side though, you know, Verhoeven, I mean, there's a lot of humor that even you can get as a kid.
Yes.
I mean, you've got Ed 209, who, while at the same time is this menacing robot that, you know, of course is humorously deficient, you know. I mean, where you've got him trying to go downstairs. I mean, here is this powerful, you know, menacing robot,
makes lion roar noises and
all this firepower, but yet it's completely defeated by a flight of stairs.
Yeah,
you know,
that's hilarious. Oh, that
you know,
yeah.
So that and
you've
it's
squealing like a pig as it's
and
like
it squeals like
up.
a pig. I mean, this is like Looney Tunes stuff. This is cartoon type violence, you know. And
my favorite thing about the Ed 209s too is that in like a lot of other movies like this, they would be some formidable foe, but they, apart from the one little bit when they're in the like the actual office and it's shooting the rockets at them, really don't pose that much of a threat. And that's kind of what I love about it, is that they're never really this big, you know, threatening like machine. It's that they're just always so laden by their inefficiencies.
It's the people behind that machine that are menacing and terrible and dangerous. Yeah, the machine itself is kind of, really, it's a poorly executed And they even mention it in the it's like, this is a piece of crap, but it's going to
Yeah.
make us a ton of money. Who cares if it works? I don't care if it works.
Yeah, that's what he says. We've already shipped
We're
out
going
all
to
the
sell
orders.
parts
Yeah.
for this for 15 years. It's going to
Yeah.
be it's going to be a cash cow for a couple decades,
Well, and that's the point. Is that's why it kills the guy in the boardroom, because they're cheaply made, right? It's that they're not well made machines, and it's really like hitting on this whole idea of this again, this like corporate culture, and especially in the '80s, so hard. Like it's not subtle in the way it does it, which I think works so much in the movie's favor.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's just some other interesting things too to kind of point out just about, I think some themes or some messages that Verhoeven's kind of stuffed in here. I mean, you'd be remiss to not kind of mention some of the Jesus metaphors, the Christ metaphors in the film. Of course, there's a few moments where Robocop definitely, you can see where Verhoeven kind of had a Jesus metaphor in mind for him. I think where he's kind of crucified by the gang is reminiscent of the kind of torture and crucifixion of Jesus. And of course, we have at the end of the film, Robocop even walks on water, which is interesting. And of course, Verhoeven has kind of admitted, not or at least discussed. Maybe admitted is the wrong word. It's not like he was trying to hide it, but he's discussed how he did kind of want to make RoboCop an American Christ figure, that he was just interested in kind of the story and metaphor of Jesus, and he felt like some of those aspects would be interesting to incorporate into the character. And I think that does definitely come across, even if not consciously. I think it's definitely comes across. Even kind of like the nailing the nails into the hands as kind of symbolized with the shotgun and
I guess shot in the hands
and just add some extra elements. But I think all of these things, it's the satire, the humor, some of these Jesus metaphors. We even have interesting kind of way that gender is dealt with in the film. I think in a lot of films, especially of this era, Nancy Allen's character would have been sexualized, would have been a love interest or something of that type, and they don't even remotely go there. She's desexualized. She is, her hair is cut short. The clothes are completely, they're covering any kind of way that you might be able to tell the gender of the character.
She's never in some.
She's never ever.
Yeah.
And we have, in the beginning of the film, when we're in the locker room, the police, both, everybody shares the same locker room. And it's no big deal. It's, nudity is not sexualized. It's just matter of fact, These are things that you don't often see, especially in a film from that era, especially in a genre action film. I mean, it's quite the opposite, right? You'd usually see gratuitous nudity. And hypersexualization.
And there'd be a love scene, and there'd be
Well, it would be love, it'd be sex, but
just sexy,
But that's usually what you would see, right? I mean, matter of fact, like a studio would demand it. They'd be like, well, we got you got to have
sell tickets.
We got to sell tickets, man. So that's it. That's interesting. I feel like those things really stand out, and together are a big part of why this film endures, and why it kind of stands apart from so much of the other stuff that was made in this space at that time. What else? I mean, there's some, on the special effects side, I mean, we talked about a little bit of this, but I think
it's Phil Tippett did all the stop motion, who's like a legend,
right?
And
I love it. The stop motion work for Ed 209 is great. They had, of course, like a small, like not, well, I say small, I don't know exactly how big they were, but of course, like fractional sizes of the Ed 209. They also had, I think, some full size Ed 209 puppets.
There's a few moments where it's full size, but I don't think the full sized one ever moves
or anything.
I think it can swivel, but I don't think it ever moves.
And it's just so that the actors could stand next to it, But I think the puppet work is fantastic. I mean, the stop motion, of course, this is stuff we don't see in today's day and age. This would absolutely be done with CGI today. But I just love it. Maybe it's because I grew up on it, and and it's obvious. You look at it with a modern eye, and of course, it doesn't look fully realistic, but it still looks better than
really
CGI
well in the scene,
to
I
me.
think. I think it's integrated in a way that it feels like it's in the scene, even if it does look sort of janky and stop motiony. But I also grew up doing stop motion, so any stop motion I love. But
Me too. With your toy, you did stop motion with like action figures and things.
yeah,
And,
the action
me too,
figures,
of course.
Legos, clay, and things like that. Yeah.
So I'm the same. And so it speaks to my heart a little bit. Of course, I grew up where stop motion and practical effects were all that. I mean, that was the state of the art when I was a kid, and so many of the films that I watched. But you've also, I mean, there's a lot of, especially on the low budget. I'm really impressed with the matte paintings, for example. You know, they shot in Dallas primarily. It's like
except for I think there's of course the overhead helicopter shots of Detroit, but
there's some stock photos. There's like, or not photos, sorry. There's some stock footage to kind of establish that it's in Detroit. And of course, that's
GM
where it's supposed to be. The steel factory where a lot of it takes place was shot in Pittsburgh, and then the bulk of it was shot in Dallas, and the landscape, you know, the cityscape.
I think the OCP headquarters are the Dallas City Hall.
And they did a great job of taking those buildings and turning them into something, you know, unique and kind of futuristic with the matte paintings. I think there's the exterior elevator shots.
It's great. Yeah.
Really well done with the matte paintings. Just fun stuff. You know, a little bit of, the OCP, their logos everywhere. You'd already mentioned the Ford Taurus, which was, you know, now, of course, we look at the car and you'd say, but at the time, it was a brand new car. It had really not been released to the public, and it was really considered to be very futuristic design for its time. And so it was ingenious to use those vehicles.
Actually something that I hadn't noticed, like you mentioned the logos, the OCP logos, I hadn't noticed until I saw it in theaters. That in the police badges and on the cars and like inside the police insignia, there's the OCP logo. It's written on it, which I think is just like a great little touch.
It's a great touch, and again, it's like a little piece of world building that just shows that OCP is everywhere. They own everything, and they're kind of omniscient, you know, omnipresent, and kind of this fascist kind of, you know, overhanging umbrella over everything. But
they put their logo on everything, and they're concerned about profit over everything else.
Everything else, which of course, it's...
which I also think is hilarious, too, that there's this element, too, of like, nobody in the corporate world is a good person, but there are the corporate people that are like better than the other there's certain corporate people who are better people than other corporate people, but none of them are good. They're all horrible people,
right? Because you've got the older guy, you've got like
the guy that's kind of the CEO,
or kind of the founder. He's kind of like the founder, and it's like, well, my goodness, I mean, if you think about it rationally for a second, he's the worst of all. I mean, he's the head of the whole darn thing.
He starts out with the big speech about how like crime is a cancer that has to be written out of society.
But you actually but we cheer for him being saved. You cheer for him being saved by Robocop, you know? And then you've got, of course, like a fantastic, we can get into performances some more in a second, but you've got Miguel Ferrer, you know, his character. I mean, he's this like ruthless up and coming executive who, you know, cutthroat guy. But we root for him too, because it's like, you know, he wants Robocop to be a good product. He is trying to make a good thing that's better than Ed 209, that's going to actually work. And then, you know, of course, he's assassinated, and you care that he's killed. You're like, oh man, you know, you feel for him a little bit. It's but you're right. All these characters are not great people, but they're also not cardboard people.
No, there's like different levels of
two-dimensional.
It's Dick who's the dick in the in the movie. He's definitely the worst of them all. But but again, it's like they're all these corporate suits who are just there for profit. So I think that's what's so funny. Like I would almost argue that, like, with the exception of very few characters, everyone in this movie there's like a sleaze to. There's like this very... I think
Nancy Allen and Peter Weller don't have...
are kind of the only two that are perhaps...
presented as like universally good people. Yep. So, but let's talk a little bit more. You know, we talked about stop motion. We talked about matte paintings. I mean, we've got to talk about the suit. Of course, you got to talk about the suit. And I think, and some makeup and practical effects, which I think are amazing here. And if I'm not mistaken, refresh my memory, who worked on some of the practical effects? Because didn't somebody come from Carpenter's The Thing? It was
Rob Bottin, Stephen Dupuis, Craig Davies.
I feel like somebody came from The Thing.
So the Fly.
Or The Fly.
Oh no,
Okay.
no, sorry. Yeah, Rob Bottin did also do The Thing. Yeah, so
Okay,
Rob Bottin did The Thing.
That's right.
And I think it was Stephen Dupuis who might have done work on The Fly.
Yeah,
Yes, The
yeah.
Fly. So it was like a collection
Some
of like
good,
pretty
yeah. So a
amazing.
really great pedigree. I mean, The Fly has extraordinary special effects and practical effects, and I mean, come on, The Thing
which
is
remind
like
me a lot of the melting at the end.
Yeah,
when
and
the guy gets the toxic waste, which is like the best. That's the scene I
Oh,
think
it's
the
so
test
good.
audiences
Oh, it's so
reacted the
good.
highest
Oh,
to. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. Yeah, actor Paul McCrane gets his character gets like pushed into the huge vat of toxic waste, and I mean, that blew me away too as a kid. I was just like, "What?"
Yes. Oh god, that scene's so great.
And I think for like the next 10 years I had this thought that like if I touched anything toxic waste, I would
that's
just
what's
melt.
gonna happen. That your hand was gonna like start going. Oh, that's such a great scene though.
And then he's just smooshed. I mean, and then,
Oh yeah, he just explodes into like
Just,
blue
like,
or green goo.
like because he's just like dissolved. It's like his body is like gelatin at that point. And my gosh, it's so good. But I mean, yeah, like we've already talked a little bit about the Murphy puppet that's shot in the head. That's an extraordinary. I mean, there is just a lot of great special effects, practical effects. The suit. Now, it's my understanding that suit was an absolute nightmare for Weller to work in. I can only imagine how horrible that was. And I mean, it's interesting. It's easy to dismiss Weller's performance or to kind of take it for granted, but that had to have been really hard work. And I think he does a superb job. I know that, it's talked about how much work he put into. He studied with somebody from Juilliard in movement for months and months and months leading up to this. And as the story goes, he did all this work, figured out like this whole kind of set of movements, of robotic movements that was going to be a part, like the basis of his character. And he gets there on the first day of shooting, and first of all, because it was the first time they'd done it and they hadn't quite figured it out, it took like 9 hours to get the suit on for the first time.
Jeez, yeah. Oh,
so the first day's shooting is gone just in trying to figure out how to get him in the suit. So 9 hours, but then once he finally got the suit on, he realized that none of that preparatory work that he did with this trainer from Juilliard was going to work because the suit didn't allow him to move at all. Like,
well, also, I mean, think about facial. Like, you only see the bottom half of his face for most of the movie.
You don't even see his eyes, and what this is like the most expressive part of an actor's face is their eyes, and they're taken away from him. So you're right. You get like the bottom. You get his chin and his mouth and his gross major motor movements, and that's like all you get. But look at how much he is able to deliver.
And I think it works so well
it works so well. I feel like the suit has heft. I mean, and this is a huge part. The sound effects, the sound design does so much heavy lifting on selling that suit. The steps, the sounds of Robocop stepping, his movements, the servos or motors moving when he, it really does a good job selling it. Because I can only imagine, I mean, if you take that stuff away, like imagine in your mind, take away all the sound effects and imagine what that suit actually sounded like in live audio on set. I mean, it probably was like squeaking, clicking plastic.
And that would even the POV shots I think work so well.
We haven't talked about the POV.
They use a lot of POV with these wonderful tech overlays and stuff like that. And
I tried to get an understanding and I couldn't quite grasp how this was done. And I'm going to ask you. I don't mean to put you on the spot here while we're recording, but the scanline overlay was really interesting to me. And I was trying to kind of suss out how they did that from a technical perspective. Now, my first thought was like that they had like an actual kind of like shaped piece of glass or something that they might have put over the lens to kind of distort the light in ridges that way. But I don't think that's how they did it.
I wouldn't be surprised if it was an early digital, like, because Tron was 82, so 5 years prior to this.
I don't think there were any digital effects.
Okay, so then it could have been. It also could have been something that was like painted, like
I think
you think of like
painted.
how lightning used to be done, where it was like painted into the frame on the actual
Yeah.
celluloid.
So maybe
So I
somebody
wouldn't be
knows
yeah.
if anybody knows out there, but I was just really intrigued. Of
If I
course,
was gonna guess, it would be painted. If there were for sure no digital effects in the movie, then yeah, I would guess that it was painted.
yeah, I just think but it's funny if you kind of think about it for a second. It's kind of funny that RoboCop has such low resolution vision.
Yes, no, yeah, that it's all like blurred and
He's got like 240. He's got like 240i like
yeah.
vision.
So you can see the scan line. Yeah,
You
yeah.
can like the
No,
scan lines are like giant, But no, but they did a great job of, and I think that's another thing that really sets this film apart. That their POV stuff. I mean, it's humanizing well, in a way, it's just entertaining. It's interesting. Of course, Terminator did this too, but we get to see inside. I mean, it's like that's what you want as an audience. You're like, what is it like in there? What does it feel like to be RoboCop? And I just love that Verhoeven gives that to you as an audience. You get to see what he sees.
You see him like picking out things and targeting, and I love also the effect when he's unscrewing the helmet and how they just had the screws basically in the drill, so as it looked like it was coming out. It looks
like it's coming out. Sure,
it's such a great. And then they would just cut to another real shot of drills coming out of a prop, and it's they
genius.
did a lot of. And again, it's like what you kind of love about especially movies of that era and stuff is that everything is like a different trick. It's very much you get that feeling of like a magic show where it's like, how are we going to trick people into believing that this, whatever
and I guess
is
that's
real.
part of what I love more, about I just love that more than CGI, and maybe that's what it is. It's like it's magic. I know when I go see a magician perform that magic isn't real. Of course, I know that it's not real. But what makes it intriguing is that I know they are actually doing something in front of my eyes.
It's the illusion, yeah.
Well,
yeah.
I know that it's hard work. It's like athleticism. I mean, there's a lot that goes into sleight of hand that's extremely difficult to do to make those illusions work. It feels a little like cheating when it's just CGI.
Yes.
I mean, and look, I know CGI is here to stay, and I know it's a valuable part of filmmaking. I get it. I'm not, it's here. What can you do? But I guess there's just a little part of me that's like these things that you describe, these small tricks, that feels like magic to me. And even though I know how it's done when I watch the film, I appreciate it. And that just could be that I'm old, that I'm old, and that's how I grew up. But I do want to say too, real quick, we were talking about those POV shots. There's more than just like the fun of kind of getting to see RoboCop and kind of this fulfillment to the audience of like letting us see what's happening inside this character. But it's also a really powerful tool to humanize RoboCop when he has the flashbacks of his family, and when he goes back to his home and he's looking through this empty shell of a home and the photographs and the burned remnants of his old life and his old humanity. We get to see that through his eyes.
Yeah, and it's like you feel that humanization coming back to him. Yeah,
and I think this is this is one of many things that layers to this film that a lot of films that could be made like this wouldn't have. And I think it really does work to set it apart.
Well, I've never seen the remake. I know you haven't either, but I know it was shot again like
even worse. No,
30 seconds down the street from me.
No,
you did see it.
I actually have seen it.
Oh,
I
okay.
actually have seen
Is
the
any of
remake,
that in the remake?
but I can't remember it.
Yeah, okay.
It literally
fair enough. Yeah.
It was like it was so much of a I can't even remember it. It's not even that I'm like, oh, it sucked. It's like I literally am indifferent. I can't even remember it.
I just remember it being cool when they were making it because there was a bunch of people, Sam
right
Jackson
down the
and
street.
stuff was like in my backyard pretty much. But no, yeah, I've never seen it, so I again, and you can't. So I don't want to say there's none of that, but I wouldn't be surprised if they glossed over a lot of that stuff. Because you never see his family live in this movie. Not that they die, but I mean, like, you never see like a live moment of like him going home to them.
Right.
You only see
in
them
flashbacks. Yeah, it's only in flashbacks.
I think it's a really great, this movie is so efficient in its storytelling in the way that it is able to it shows you what you need to see in order to feel the feelings of it. I'm sure if there was a moment at the beginning of the movie where it's like he's like at home with them and I've got to go to work, see ya, I've been transferred to this, and it would just be like it really slow it down. Whereas Verhoeven, and I assume this was also from the screenplay as well, where they just knew what needed to be seen, what's important to the story. Everything moves along really nicely, and it's lovely. I mean, lovely might not be the best word for it, but
it's okay.
it's charming. It's very charming.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. There's
And
a
you
lot
really
of
root
charm
for
to
him.
this film,
You know,
and
it's like
there's a lot of pieces to that. I mean, it's it's from the script, it's Verhoeven's direction, it's the actors' performances, which are universally great. I mean, we've talked about Peter Weller, but we've not talked about Kurtwood Smith. I mean, a hero is only as good as his villain or her villain, and Kurtwood Smith's villain is just outstanding in this film. He, I know he did a lot of improvisation there on, and it works. I mean, a lot of his best lines were improvised. And he's fantastic. He's got this orally fixated, just and he's got his own sense of humor, which is fantastic.
Oh, he's so good. Yeah.
I mean, so not only is he terrifying and scary, but he's also hysterical.
Mm-hmm. And he turns into a wimp at the end when he just rats everyone else. But then, then he comes back into the boardroom and he's flirting with the like receptionist and
it's
all this
fantastic.
stuff. And it's like he's such a great.
It's so fun, and Miguel,
well-rounded. Again, like it's one of those things. Like all the characters in the movie are so well-rounded.
Nancy Allen, I think, is great. She gets a chance to be, tough and an equal hero to Robocop.
Even at the end when she almost dies, I like how, again, it's like such a part of this charm of this movie that it's not, there's no moment where he runs over to her and he's like holding her and he's like, oh, and she's just kind of like, it's okay, they'll fix you.
Right.
And like it's this great, like almost comedic bit that he says to her because he's just like, it's fine.
They'll fix you. They fix everything.
Yeah.
Is what he says. Yeah, but she holds her own, and I really do appreciate that. She's not some damsel in distress that needs to be saved by Robocop. Not at all.
Yeah.
Which is I think what you'd have in a lot of other scripts that could have been made, you'd have you'd have some kind of romantic relationship, some weird inappropriate, like he's a robot now, but there's like some love affair going on somehow with that. I can just see that happening, and I'm grateful they don't go there. But if we, who else? I mean, Miguel Ferrer is a fantastic.
He's fantastic.
He's
plays
fantastic
the
in this.
Sleaze, coke doing, yeah.
But you can, he's not just sleaze. I mean, it's
he's got aspirations.
He's got aspirations, and it's like when he's killed, you like feel bad for him. I mean, he's like kneecapped and then left to to blow up in his house. I mean,
he's kind of what you assume the villain is going to be, but he's almost like a red herring in that way because then he's killed off, and it's
and because there's layers of bad guys, right? And it's like, but I think it does a great job. It really does a great job. If you think about, how many people have to work at a company and that kind of like let bad things happen for big things to go bad, right? It's like, it's because that's the thing. It's like, well, I'm just an employee. I just work there. I'm just trying to get by. I mean, that's how like things turn horrible. It's, yes, there's a person at the top who has some kind of like, sociopathic, ideas maybe about what a company's role is in the world, and that stockholder profits are the only thing that matters. But for that to work, you also have to have a lot of employees working at that company who also don't care either.
With the line. Yeah,
and then you also have to have a lot of stockholders who don't care and don't ask questions. And that's, of course, exactly what happens in the real life. So it's
I think that's perhaps what I call it kind of the Verhoeven curse, which is the shame of a lot of Verhoeven's works, is that he is such a, to me, brilliant satirist that oftentimes the satire goes over a lot of people's heads. I've seen people discussing this movie and discussing Starship Troopers thinking that they are 100%, serious and in on what they're or
really
going for what they're doing. And
really,
so which I think
people take it very literally.
It's bizarre to me because it seems very obvious to me. But I think that it's just one of those things that it's like I can't imagine watching this movie and not coming away with it thinking that it's a satire of corporate culture and corporatism and neoliberalism, but it really, I think one of the things that it does is does that really well because things are so well rounded. And so there's a lot of, as heightened as the movie is, there's a lot of realism in the things that are being presented. There's very real elements to this movie.
Well, it's gritty. It's gritty. Yeah,
exactly. It's very gritty and it's very unapologetic in what it's kind of going after and making fun of.
Yeah.
And I think because of that, it feels like it could be genuine in a weird way, but it doesn't. I mean, again, it's not difficult to discern what's being made fun of in this movie, but I'm not necessarily surprised that some people watch this and go like, yeah, it's like just a badass action movie and nothing more.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised that kind of goes over people's heads sometimes.
Sure.
And especially, again, same thing with Starship Troopers, which of course is another quite similar in tone Verhoeven movie.
Yeah.
So
Look, it happens. It's always going to be the
Yeah.
case.
Yeah.
I remember like another film that's good, Fight Club, which actually kind of was like mocking and parodying this, kind of like fascist group of people who get together and, but what did people want to do? They wanted to start their own fight club. They
Yes,
thought it was
yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
This is like, this is since the dawn of time,
Totally.
different
Yeah.
people, you've got, when you've got 100 million people watching, a film, you're going to have percentages of people who think all kinds of different things.
You're
about
never
it.
going to solve it, basically. You're
Yeah.
never going to get everyone to
And that's okay.
see
That's,
it the same way.
And
Yeah.
that's okay. And that's a totally different topic for a totally different time. But that's, it's interesting questions about, what is the responsibility of the artist, if any, when it comes to the responses of their work. And those are really interesting questions for another time, perhaps. But well, anything else we could think about? I mean, we've talked the soundtrack. Basil, I think is it Polidorus? His soundtrack is fantastic.
It's one of the best. Yeah, I love it.
And the cinematography is Joost Vacano. And I wasn't terribly familiar with his work, but we looked him up. He's done work for some other Verhoeven films.
Yeah, he was kind of Verhoeven's go-to, it seemed like, until 2000, basically, which might have been, I think, when he retired.
Yeah. But everything just the film is firing on all cylinders. What more can you say?
Oh, it's
it went on-
unapologetic, it's bombastic,
It went on to, of course, to inspire an entire franchise, which sadly,
and I would say almost an entire genre.
You're right.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking TV shows, cartoons, video games, movies, a remake, and sadly, none of it has lived up to the promise of the first film.
Yeah.
Sadly. But I think that just goes to show even more, how rare it is to get such a talented group of people together on one project. It's, all the stars aligned for this. So I'm glad that we have it. And it's a film that stuck with me. And clearly it has you too, because you've picked it for this episode. And what fun it
And then
was
again,
to revisit
such a
it.
coincidence that I was able to see it in theaters after picking it.
That's fantastic. Now, if only it could have been in film, but hey, you can't have
I wish,
yeah. All right. Well, I guess we'll wrap that up. Episode 42, Verhoeven's Robocop. Cullen, thanks for picking this film, and I really enjoyed discussing it with you. Everybody out there, I hope you enjoyed listening to our discussion. Until next time, we'll see you all on the flip side.